that governments are not moral institutions. That you have to make the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, costly.
Yeah.
So you have to let them know, or you have to let corporations know that it's going to cost them in terms of money or in terms of reputation, etc. You have to make this costly. You have to exercise power.
Yeah. I think.
And so talk to us a little bit about political advocacy in that context, from the ground up or from the top down. Josh Viss, Dr. Josh Viss. This man, I have so much respect for. I knew Josh's mom and dad. I met them in Jerusalem. Marlon is here, Josh's dad, and Sally, Josh's mom. They were the representatives of the Reformed Church in America in Jerusalem. How many years, Marlon?
We lived there 5. We've been involved there since 2006. The same exactly.
So they lived in Jerusalem, and they were the Reformed Church in America presence in Jerusalem. Josh then took over from his parents as staff people as a staff person from the Reformed Church in America, and has made numerous trips himself and led numerous trips of activists from the Michigan area and all around the country, really, to Palestine and Israel. And his network of, not contacts, network of friends, really, is vast. And he's probably one of the most well-connected people I know in Palestine and Israel. Palestinian Christian, Palestinian Muslim, Jewish Israeli, the wide spectrum of activists on behalf of justice and peacemaking in Palestine and Israel. And his film, The Law and the Prophets, which we included the link in our promotional materials, is really probably the best introduction to understanding from not some AK from the outside looking in, but from the people who are there, the peacemakers, the justice advocates, and others who are working really for a nonviolent social transformation and equal rights, human rights, civil rights, political rights for all people. And so really, we interviewed Josh and some of the people in the film a few years ago when the film came out. But really, it's our privilege tonight to have Josh here in person. And Josh, I just want to say welcome. Yeah.
He's better connected than I am.
Well, thank you. I want to ask you about a whole lot of issues tonight, Josh, but you have these friends that you interviewed, and I thought maybe I'd just give you an opportunity up front to catch us up on. I mean, I know you stay connected with many of them. There's Sahar Vardi, the Jewish conscientious objector, Israeli Jewish conscientious objector. There's Dawood Nassar, our friend at Tent of Nations, and many of our other mutual friends.
Yeah.
Who, tell us a little bit about just 2 or 3 of them who you've stayed connected with, and update us.
Yeah, I've had some, not as much contact as I would like over the past year or so. And partially, I think there's a burnout that is happening for a lot of people like them and like us. And Salwa Duavis, who's one of the people of Military Court Watch, she actually passed away. I think it was just before October. It was September of 23, I think, I want to say, something like that. It was an aneurysm. It wasn't anything violent from the outside. That was a really tough loss because she devoted her life to this work, and not many people knew her, to be honest. She wasn't some international celebrity or activist. She was just a regular person who put her time and efforts into trying to make a difference for her people. She's Palestinian.
Mike.
And, died unceremoniously just one day without seeing really any improvement to the things she was fighting for decades. And there's a lot of people like that who fight for things their whole life and see very little change. And having now done this work, so I started in 2016 to do it full time. That's hard to do. These are hard fights to stay in because, I mean, if anything, we are going backwards, right? And I would say before October 7th, there did feel like there was some momentum for Palestinians, at least in the American context. There was the Democratic Party mainly was starting to change. And that has continued through October 7th until now. There's widespread support and sympathy for Palestinians amongst the Democratic Party. So that feels like it's been not totally lost, right? Because we've seen lots of activism on college campuses amongst young people. I don't think that's going, I mean, the activism on campuses specifically was obviously handled terribly, I think, and not in the way most people think. Most people think it was handled terribly because Jewish students were not protected enough. And I'm sure there were times when Jewish students felt uncomfortable. I have not heard of any really incidents where I feel like they were unsafe. Whereas on the other side, on these campuses, they were harassed by regular people online, right? Docs online. Their administration and faculty really turned against them. I mean, Mahmoud Khalil and was arrested. And who's the woman from Turkey who was also arrested? What's that? Thank you, Poster. So, but it's been portrayed in the media as though the side that really was more in danger was the aggressor, and so everything's been really turned upside down. It feels like, and it was already pretty upside down. I'm glad to see Sahar is coming here because I haven't heard from her. I've texted her. I've tried to reach out to her early on. I was able to get through to her on WhatsApp. And she had wrote something really beautiful about a friend of hers in Gaza who died early on in October and November. I know that I don't know what's happening with Military Court Watch now that Salwa has died, and her husband, Gerard Gordon, the other person in the film who is a part of Military Court Watch, he is not an Israeli citizen. He was getting his citizenship when Salwa died, so he's left. He's now back. I think he's in England, I believe. That's where he said he was headed, and I haven't caught up with him lately. So, I mean, I think there's been surprisingly good support for Palestinians in the United States among regular people, mostly liberals and Democrats. And I think we can be hopeful about that, especially amongst younger people. But none of that activism has made any difference in what our government has chosen to do. And that is really demoralizing and frustrating. Because we almost have no bipartisan support for anything, right? It's almost non-existent at this point, except Israel. That has held. Bipartisan support for Israel has held to this day. I mean, this started under Joe Biden, right? Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken, and they supported this genocide the entire time, greenlighting basically everything. So it's mind-boggling that the one place of bipartisan support is for a country committing genocide. So I'm a little all over the place in how I'm feeling because I don't want to say like we're making no progress. We are making some progress amongst regular people, and that shows up in polling. The Democratic Party, the base of the Democratic Party, for example, I do not think there's any way that the next, if we're able to have another presidential election, and I say if, because I don't know, that person will not be able to be an AIPAC pro-Israel person in the Democratic Party. I don't think that will be possible. And that is, in some ways, progress. It's something. So maybe I'll just end that little part there.
Okay. One of the things you focus on in the film is what Jeff Alper calls the matrix of control. That is it's not just borders, right? It's not just checkpoints or the apartheid wall, but it's the domination system that Israel controls over all of the land, the West Bank, as well as what they claim is Israel. Recently, Israel's far-right finance minister Smotrich announced that they're reviving a settlement plan that will cut the West Bank in half, or in two at least.
Yeah, and this has been talked about for 2
Since the
decades.
90s, yeah, since the
3
90s.
decades now.
Adding 3,400 illegal new housing units right outside Jerusalem. And this is, by the way, this is how Smotrich put it during his announcement. This is Zionism at its best. Building, settling, and strengthening our sovereignty in the land of Israel. So I want you to talk to us about the many layers of Israel's matrix of control.
Well, it starts with varying rights for different peoples, right? Like that's critical. And there are layers, and we're seeing now the people with the least amount of rights in the system suffering the most. Gaza was always the place where Palestinians had the least amount of control and the least amount of rights. Then you go to the West Bank and the people living there, and in some ways, where you live in the West Bank makes a difference in how your life is. If you live in Area A, you're going to get less harassment.
Tell us what area.
Yeah. So during the Oslo Accords, it was split up. The West Bank was split up into 3 areas: areas A, B, and C. And the idea was eventually all of these areas would be Palestinian. But it started with Area C was given over. Area A control was given over to the Palestinian Authority.
And that,
sort of.
And that's those
Major
are
population centers,
those are
basically.
Jericho,
Yeah.
Bethlehem,
Ramallah,
Nablus, Ramon.
Jenin.
So that's area A.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's good. Sometimes you get so deep in these things that you forget what a regular person knows about it. So thanks, those corrections are important. And then Area B was like split control. Israeli military controlled it, but the Palestinians were supposed to control like the basic services for people. And then Area C was under total military control of the Israeli military. And Area C is like, I think it's 60% of the West Bank is Area C. So it never was, Palestinians never had control of any significant territory. Area A is about 20% of the West Bank that they have control. But then, of course, also the Palestinian Authority is really working underneath the Israeli occupation, the Israeli Defense Force, the Israeli government. They don't get to operate independently, really, in Area A. If the Israeli military wants to go into an Area A city where technically they're not supposed to, because it's supposed to be controlled by the Palestinian Authority, they go in whenever they want. So you have these, even in the West Bank, you have people living in really different situations. If you happen to be in Area C, so you might remember Doug Nasser in the film, Tent of Nations, right? He's got a little section towards the end there. I mean, one of his big problems is that he's in Area C surrounded by settlements. That's why he's in Area C, because all the settlements, the Israeli, Jewish civilians living in the West Bank are living in settlements. All those settlements are in Area C. So if you're a Palestinian in Area C, you're living close to a settlement, you're a danger. You're seen as a danger. So your life is much more difficult. I think that's fair to say, much more difficult than if you're living in Area A. Then you go to East Jerusalem, and they have residency, but not citizenship. Okay? And you lose residency, just like, well, I don't think we fully realized how precarious a green card was in the United States until recently. My wife was a green card holder and has gotten citizenship. She got citizenship in, was it June, Deb? I think that's right, June. We were thrilled, obviously. Just this June, yeah. She was a green card holder before then, and then seeing what happened to Mahmoud Khalil, thinking about the work that I do, we started to get afraid. So it's similar, having residency in East Jerusalem is similar to having a green card. And as you might imagine, Israel looks for reasons to end people's residency, right? You have to show that you live there and all these complications, some of which are in the film. And then you have Israeli Arab citizens or Arab Israelis or Palestinian Israelis. These are Palestinians who are citizens of the state of Israel, in theory, should have the same rights as Jewish Israelis, but in practice, they don't. They are discriminated against in terms of the job market. Housing is almost completely segregated in Israel. Meaning there are places where Palestinian Israelis or Arab Israelis can live, and there are most places they cannot. They are not allowed to rent in certain places. Not by some official edict, it's just informally everybody knows that they're not going to be able to rent or buy homes in these certain spots around Israel. So there's all these layers of rights to begin with. And then within all those layers, there's different levels of harassment. I didn't do the last one. Gaza, of course, is the worst of all because they were basically cut off from the rest of the world in Gaza. Egypt, the Rafah border with Egypt. Egypt doesn't really control that border because America and Israel decides what Egypt's going to do in that border. Because we give tons of money to Egypt. We give tons of money to Israel. We also give lots of money to Egypt, by the way, because they made a peace deal with Israel. The wall, as the film says, the wall has allowed for a lot more control because now you can say, if you want to come into Israel from the West Bank, you have to get a permit from the Israeli military. And of course, that is a super complicated and tricky process. What's clever about all of this is none of it is, a lot of it, not none of it, a lot of it is not inherently violent. It's just a lot of paperwork and bullshit and harassment and being stopped here. There's administrative detention exists for Palestinians, for example. If you're a Palestinian in the West Bank, you can just be detained for no reason. And then it can be extended for no reason. That's all that comes to mind at the moment. What am I missing?
No, let me ask you, this is almost so basic, I'm embarrassed to ask, but for most of the folks who are supporters of Israel in the United States these days, and those who would be argumentative on this, on what's happened in the last 680 plus days, that they begin the conversation with talking about October 7th, as if the history of Israel and Palestine began then.
Right.
And
sometimes they'll say like Hamas broke the ceasefire on October 7th. Those are some of the lines that you hear.
And just talk a little bit about just how arguments are framed, how conversations are framed, because it's that the language that's used is not unimportant.
Yeah. I think Ta-Nehisi Coates has been helpful here over the last, he wrote a book called The Message. Is Ta-Nehisi Coates a name people know? African-American male, probably about 45, I would guess, something like that. His first major work was Case for Reparations. I think it was in the Atlantic, meaning reparations for African-Americans based on slavery. And then he wrote a book called Between the World and Me, which is a really beautiful, powerful book. I'd recommend it to you. It's kind of a memoir, but it's meant to be a letter to his son. And then more recently, he wrote a book called The Message, and it's got various chapters. I have one chapter on Israel-Palestine. And there's a couple of things. He said when he went there and he experienced, I think Hebron was one of the first places he went, and he experienced that, he immediately understood what this was as a black man. And, you know, for him, it just felt like this is Jim Crow all over again. Like, this is so obviously that. It's obviously racism. That's all this is. I find that clarity from him pretty helpful. And then, so he has adopted using the word, and I use it as well, using the word apartheid. And what he said was like, you're either for apartheid or you're not. Like, this is apartheid, and you have to decide whether you think this tool should be used on people or it shouldn't, essentially. And that's kind of where I'm at with the morality of the system that Israel has created for Palestinians. Either we decide it's okay for some people to be treated in this way, not have basic civil rights, not have basic human rights, be held under military occupation for, I mean, what have we had, 77 years? Is that about right? No, that's too long. That's since the founding, isn't it? Since 67, under military occupation. Or you don't think that this is okay for people. So for October 7th, right, to try and begin to say, like, let's talk about this conflict starting with October 7th, it's extremely disingenuous in terms of the history of what happened. And it's an attempt to sort of exonerate Israel entirely and to give Israel a free pass to do sort of whatever it wants in Gaza. I don't think we should justify what Hamas did. I can't bring myself to a place of saying, like, you're oppressed, you have the right to self-defense. That is true. They do have a right to self-defense, Palestinians, under international law. But those are, by and large, and the International Criminal Court has agreed with this, Hamas committed war crimes when it did what it did. Now, did it commit war crimes when it targeted Israeli soldiers? I think it's a viable question. And the majority of people killed on October 7th were military and police. I'm trying to remember that, I didn't look it up again, but it's more than half, I believe. But still, the acts that they committed on October 7th, I don't think we should justify those, even though I think Palestinians do have a right to self-defense. But the idea that you couldn't understand, like it's impossible to understand that level of anger, I think that's a mistake to say, that would never happen to me. I would never be so angry as to commit those types of offenses. This is another thing that Ta-Nehisi Coates said. He said, when I think about it, he said, I would like to think that if I were in their situation, I would not be willing to commit those type of acts on other people, on my oppressors. He's like, but I cannot guarantee you that if I grew up in the Gaza Strip, you know, under blockade my entire life, you know, because these people were probably mostly 30 and under. It's amazing how little we know about the people who came in on October 7th. We don't even know, I mean, I don't even know how many Palestinians came in. I mean, we know very little about that day. But I think the idea that, you know, if this was done to 2 million Americans, I don't know, there's probably a state that has about 2 million people. Wyoming has like 700,000, but at 2 million people, it's 2 million random people in Indiana. Put them under those conditions for decades. And you won't be able to find 100, 200 people that are willing to rise up with arms and finally say, the hell with this, we're going to fight back. I think that's unrealistic. I think if you put anybody in those conditions, and some of those people are going to become violent. So I think we lack understanding. And what's interesting is there's tons of understanding for Israel's anger, right? There is unending understanding for there are still people defending Israel right now as we speak, while they starve people to death. And nobody ever shows any compassion for people who are willing to use violence when they've been put under those circumstances.
Yeah. We, I'm just itching to get in here, but I really wanna, no, I want you to, have the floor. Lee, rightly you're focusing on Gaza. I mean,
Yeah.
what's happening there is devastating. But while the eyes of the world are turned to Gaza, there's an incessant, Rifat Kassis calls it slow, but it's not so slow, ethnic cleansing and genocide happening in the West Bank. Do you want to say just a little bit about some of what's happening in the West Bank? Yeah.
So I don't think people fully appreciate how right-wing Israel has become. Because a lot of us, and this would especially be true of a lot of you who are older, our memories of something like the Oslo Accords in the 90s, you remember that there was at one time a vibrant labor party in Israel. It is now inconsequential, as far as I can tell. I've not seen them even spoken about when we have elections. So there was a time when people say, look, yeah, the settlers are crazy, but they're not really representative of people in Israel. Or they'll say, and people still do this now, Benjamin Netanyahu's awful, and we hate that government, this right-wing government, but this isn't representative of the state of Israel. I mean, look at all the protests, right? Look at all the protests that happened before October 7th when there was this judicial coup that Netanyahu was trying to do. But it's true to an extent. It's not true when it comes to the occupation and suffering of Palestinians. On that, there is widespread support within Israeli society.
75 to 80%.
Yeah.
In Israeli polls done by Israeli newspapers, 75, 80% support.
Yeah, there's polls that say, do you have concern for the suffering of Palestinians? And the results are always little to no concern for the suffering of Palestinians. And we're talking about polls that came out 2 months ago. And these have been consistently this way. So there was a time in which people wanted to make a separation between there's this radical group, the settler movement, Likud party maybe, or certain elements of the Likud party, that's Netanyahu and Smotrich, and well, actually it's not Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they were other parties, they just joined with Likud. But what's happened since mid-90s is most of Israeli society has shifted into the Likud camp and is supportive of what happens in the West Bank and is supportive of what is happening in Gaza, which means that the settlers in the West Bank feel totally empowered to do whatever they want, kind of whenever they want, because there's no accountability to speak of. I mean, one of the filmmakers of No Other Land, whose name I'm not recalling, was recently shot and killed by a settler.
No, the land that won.
Sorry, that won the Oscar for Best Documentary in the last Academy Awards thing. Yeah, and also that film has not been able to get anybody to pick it up so that it streams anywhere. And so a settler shot and killed this gentleman. He might go to jail. He might go to jail for 10 years. He might go to jail for 5 years. He might not go to jail at all. The settlers are totally empowered in the West Bank. So you have vigilante violence in the West Bank now, on top of an extreme vigilante violence. I mean, they're entirely empowered. They're now armed. Ben-Gvir, after October 7th, they started a program to arm the settlers in the West Bank. This was relatively new. There was tons of weapons in Israel because there were lots of people in the army carrying weapons around Israel, but private ownership of weapons was less common. I think less common than in the United States, if I recall. And that has changed. They are now armed, well armed. And so there's no real check on the settler movement anymore. And so that is happening now on top of all of the sort of systems that have been in place for decades to keep Palestinians quiet, pacified, not allow for any resistance or coming together of communities so that they can resist in some way. And there's a sort of an opening now to ramp that up in the West Bank because all eyes are focused on Gaza. And so that's been happening since October 7th. And now we're starting to see more settlements, right? It's the, what is it, the E1 or E2? What's that? The settlement block that's going to be built? E1.
E1.
Thank you. It's E1. And they've been talking about this for decades. And the US has stood up and said, no, you're not doing that. It's one of the few things that we stood up and said no to on Israel because it sort of cuts the West Bank in half and makes it more difficult for a two-state solution to be viable. And of course, the reasoning for wanting to do this construction is exactly for that. I mean, Smotrich said that explicitly. We're trying to cut it in half and make it a Palestinian state impossible. And maybe in different times. I mean, I don't think Trump, I mean, it didn't happen under the first Trump term. Maybe he shot him down at some point. I don't know. But there's no way that this administration is going to stop anything. I don't know. I don't know where the line is.
I've got a few more questions. I want to open it up to the rest of the gang here. You were with me in Palestine about a year and a half ago, right after we were at the height of the beginning of the war in February of 2024.
Yeah.
A lot's happened since then, but any lasting impressions from that time to last time you were in Palestine?
We did encounter at Dawood's, Chris and I, Chris worked with me until the end of this year and then we're done. We went to just see, there's a road that leads to Dawood's and the Israeli military or settlers, who knows anymore. We shoot them all the same.
Dawood has this 100-acre farm, the
Right.
Dawood Nasser family, 100-acre farm. They've had the deed for 105, 106 years and surrounded by settlements, and Israel wants it because it's on a hilltop. And they've been in court fighting the Israeli government to hold on to their land that they have the deed for in their hands. And that, please.
So we walked towards the path where then it's blocked off. They just pick a bunch of dirt and whatever else and block off the street so you can't come all the way to the farm on that road. And that's the way you come typically, say if you're coming from Jerusalem or Bethlehem, that's the way you often come to this farm. So we just wanted to see, he said, oh, they blocked it off even further now. So you have to walk even further when people come. And we were walking there and then all of a sudden two men who were pretty obviously settlers started walking towards us and they both had automatic weapons, which was new. I had not encountered settlers with automatic weapons very often. It's not unheard of before October 7th. They did have weapons, but I had never encountered settlers with weapons at Dawood's before that time. So they walked, we went back. I sort of taunted them a little bit, which was probably not a smart move, but we were so annoyed. And so we went back, and then they walked onto the farm and just kind of walked wherever they wanted, which was an indication of a kind of new kind of brazenness amongst the settler community that had already stepped in. This is over, it was a year and a half ago now, at that point. So that did surprise me a little bit, and that was different.
Did they approach you at all?
They didn't, they yelled to us, they wanted us to come towards them. we were walking that way and they were like, "Ugh." And my joking was like, "What, you come over here?" So they wanted to have an encounter with us. I don't know why. I think probably just to be annoying and to sort of, I think they wanted to play tough guy a little bit, right? Now, when they got up to the Dawood's farm, they just kind of walked around. They didn't do anything, but they didn't talk with us. They pretended like they didn't know English. I think or something.
Let's say a word about when we were in Hebron
Mhm.
and, when we were meeting with Isa Amro and the Christian Peacemaker team folks and in the heart of the city.
Yeah.
Followed, you know.
This is I hadn't.
I say this because we just hosted Isa Amro here, just a few months ago.
Okay. So this is after we had kind of done the tour with Isa, if we're thinking of the same park. And we had come kind of to the end of our tour, and then we were walking through part of Hebron, and suddenly there was soldiers and a group of Orthodox settlers or some kind of settlers who live in Hebron. Now, Hebron's a very strange place. It's like a microcosm of the occupation because you have the city of Hebron is broken up in all these really bizarre ways, all of which are intended to make life easier for the Jewish settlers who live there and life harder for the Palestinians who live there. So what this was is that it was Shabbat, I think, or it was Friday night, I think. They were like welcoming Shabbat, I think. Does that sound right? Is that your memory? Shabbat is Sabbath, so it begins on Friday night and it ends on Saturday night. And they just wanted to take a walk through Hebron, through some of the Palestinian parts of Hebron. So the soldiers then cleared everybody out so that about, I don't know, what do you think, it was 30 settlers could walk through, right, while these soldiers protected them from, in this case, I remember somebody on the trip was like, look at us, I mean, what do you think we're gonna do? Just a bunch of, Chris and I were some of the youngest people there. We were not that threatening, I didn't think. But the soldiers made sure to sort of make a show of force so that they could, it was just this obvious sign that this is a place where Jews are supreme. And this is what it will always be. And we will do this every Friday just to show you that we can and that we will and we're never going to give up. And you're lesser than, it was intended as a symbolic show of force, I guess, but it was more than that, right? It wasn't just force. It was a kind of supremacy.
You alluded to this a little bit before. I want you to expand on it a little bit more. You were also with me a year ago in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
You and Chris, and we gathered a number of folks together. And what's your sense of political advocacy with government officials? And maybe both are necessary,
Mhm.
but there's the sense that we need to convince our government officials, our our senators, right?
Yeah.
There's also a sense that, well, you work from the ground up, and it's, you build a movement that makes them pay, if they vote a certain way, because
Right.
when Isa Amro was here in this webinar that we just led yesterday, for most of us progressive types who are here, the sense is if you just, I call it the liberal syndrome. If you just get people in a room, you just explain the facts to them, you'll convince them of the moral argument.
Mhm.
And Isa says to us, and in the webinar yesterday, we were told that governments are not moral institutions. That you have to make the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, costly.
Yeah.
So you have to let them know, or you have to let corporations know that it's going to cost them in terms of money or in terms of reputation, etc. You have to make this costly. You have to exercise power.
Yeah. I think
And so talk to us a little bit about political advocacy in that context. From the ground up or from the top down?
I mean, I'm trying to think of like congressmen or women or senators who were at one time AIPAC supported pro-Israel, who then changed their mind. And nobody is coming to mind. It can't be nobody. But I have not seen a lot of that. Which is very discouraging, of course, right? Because you think you can make a moral argument and some of these folks might change their mind. Elizabeth Warren, maybe a little bit lately? I don't know. Does somebody come to mind for you?
Well, I think Amy Klobuchar
She recently signed that letter.
voted with Bernie on the resolution, to not send our students, I'd be wrong.
It could be, it could be. I think if you're going to find those types of people, they will be Democrats. I can't think of a Republican at this point, right? That you would even pretend might be open to such a conversation. What we have found is that when you can elect people who are already have sort of a pro-Palestinian stance, that can work. It can also backfire. I mean, I'm thinking of Cory Bush, right?
Yeah.
But she didn't lose to a Republican. She probably lost in the primary.
She lost in the primary because of AIPAC money.
Exactly.
The Zionist lobby went after her and, Jamal Bowman in New York.
Jamal Bowman as well. That's right.
Bernie Sanders has certainly been vocal.
Bernie's been, yes,
Consistently vocal about advocating for Palestine.
absolutely. Bernie's, I mean, has anybody been more effective or vocal than Bernie?
I can't think of.
I mean, maybe some other people have been more vocal, you know, Eldon Omar, you know, you think of the squad folks and
Where would you put your time, energy, and money in terms of political advocacy?
this is a really hard question that I've been wrestling with, but I think when you say, I think things need to become very disruptive. Maybe more symbolic acts. I've seen on social media in some place, I don't remember where it was, maybe it was Australia or England, you know, people will do like these artistic symbolic things about these are something that represents all the Palestinian children who were killed. And it seems like, from what I could tell, that was moving and had some effect. Now this would be ground up advocacy, right? So you hope regular people see this and are moved by it and maybe would be willing to rethink their position on it. As I told you earlier, and I'll just name this again, I have thought a lot about finding the churches in my area that are either quiet, those wouldn't be the first places I go, but the ones that I know are sort of openly supportive of Israel. Look, on Sunday morning, all those people are there. Why not go and do a protest at a church on a Sunday morning that you know is supportive of Israel? Because it's disruptive. They're used to being able to go to their church in peace and not be hassled by anybody and hear the same stuff they like to hear. So I am trying to think about like creative, disruptive, uncomfortable. Costly is one, like literally costly. It's tough. The money part is tough.
When we were in DC together, a year ago, we worked with a group called Christians for Ceasefire and Just Peace, and we did a die-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters. Yeah, so that disruption and costly solidarity is important.
Just,
We'll get time, Victoria, for questions. So let me
it
just,
wasn't a question.
okay, go ahead. No, please, Victoria.
You talked about representing the number of children that have died in Gaza, and immediately what I thought of is when AIDS was first coming out in the country, and a group went together to make it clear to the American people how many people were dying from AIDS, and they did this quilt. to represent every single person
Yeah.
who had died. I don't know what the time frame was, or whether it was a year or since the beginning of the infection, I don't know. But it really struck a chord with the American
did.
people. It brought home just how pervasive people, were dying from this. What you're talking about, to represent those children, sometimes it takes something visual
Mm-hmm.
for people to get their arms
Yes.
around it and see just how horrible
Yeah.
it is.
Art,
Yeah.
story, art. We know these things are more effective than facts and speeches and explanations. That's just a fact. I think. I like facts and figures. I mean, those are the things I'm better at. So, I mean, it's tough for me to try and move into story and art and creative expression. I'm trying to work more towards that. There's a gentleman a young man that I've come across on TikTok. I think his name is Jesse Wells. I just wrote something about him. He's writing these protest anthems, and he wrote one about Gaza. I've only seen one. It's called "Starve Away," and it's done in an ironic tone. He's like, God sanctioned. He's singing the song as though he's for all the starving. Like, I love this. This is my God. My God kills my enemies and kills the children of my enemies. Right? So he's trying to invoke the ridiculousness of it. I think stuff like that is powerful as well. I guess I don't know anymore how, if you take a person that's already pro-Israel on AIPAC's payroll, I don't know how to flip those people anymore. In the same way that I don't know how to change white evangelicals anymore. I really don't. I've spent 10 years trying to understand, trying to make arguments, and nothing works. I know that it's depressing to think we can't change these people's minds. I think we should shame the hell out of everybody we can. There's another thing you can do, which is also like, it's uncomfortable. I mean, obviously, Brene Brown would not be on board, I suppose, but I don't know what else to do anymore.
I'm glad, Victoria, you brought up about the quilt, and Josh, you mentioned art. What's not on your upcoming programs is, it looks like the first week of February, at the end of this year, sometime this fall, we're gonna put out a call to artists in the area to create a work of what we're calling resistance art and protest art, and it should be about immigration, LGBTQ+, immigrant rights, environmental justice, and Palestine liberation. And we're hoping to have then an exhibit of resistance art with the artists sometime in the first week of February. So that'll be, it's percolating. We've got a group together to organize that. We're waiting to the fall to put the word out, to put the call for works, artistic works out in the community. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, and I'm glad you mentioned works of art.
And I think it's possible to continue making inroads in the Democratic Party, turn the Democratic Party essentially into an anti-apartheid party. I don't know how to describe what it could become, but a party that at least has more sympathy for Palestinians than it does for Israel. We're already there in terms of the grassroots of the Democratic Party. We're already there. It's just not reflected in our representatives yet.
Look at it this way. I mean, the two of you were talking about Bernie Sanders. For the first time in my memory, and maybe in history, more Democratic senators than not supported suspending arms sales.
I think it was 27, right?
27
Yeah.
Democratic senators.
That's huge.
And what's the number, 48 senators,
Yeah.
47? So I mean, the majority of Democratic senators supported Bernie Sanders' bill to suspend military arms sales to Israel. I mean, that ain't nothing,
It's not enough.
right, So.
I mean, it's really hard when we're in an emergency.
Right, I mean,
Right?
it's hard-
That's what's hard about it. We're in an
People-
emergency and we want action now. We don't want symbolic action. But symbolic action is not nothing. I agree there for sure.
Let me ask you, as long as we're talking about, let's talk about the churches. I mean, I think it's fair to say that the Reformed Church in America leans more conservative than most of mainline Christian denominations. But take your RCA hat off and put your kind of theological, religious,
What's left there?
Christian hat on. Where the churches in this? I mean, it's not a fully positive story.
Is it a remotely positive story?
Pretty hard to say.
It's pretty hard to say. I don't, except I don't know what to do with particularly conservative Christians and the conservative Christian church. And that goes for, as far as I can tell, certainly for white people, increasingly for Hispanics, at least Protestant, not Catholic, from what I've seen. White Catholics are generally with the evangelicals.
Yeah.
And there's also some Christian Zionism in the Black church that I've experienced.
Absolutely.
It's pretty strong there too. So, whereas the Black church is, more of the social gospel, and I think just a much healthier version of Christianity on most things than the white church. On this one, it's not as positive as we would like. It's, I don't know how at the end of this, I don't know how any of these religions are going to have much credibility. I mean, all three religions are involved here.
Yeah.
They're principally involved.
Yes.
Israel is a Jewish state. Most Palestinians are Muslim. The Palestinian fighters that came into Israel were almost certainly all fundamentalist Muslims. And the United States, the main supplier of arms and support to Israel, is still considered and overwhelmingly Christian. And the president, when this started, the president was Joe Biden, a committed Catholic, as far as I can tell. And the Secretary of State was Anthony Blinken, Jewish, right? As I understand.
Yeah.
All three of these religions are implicated and look terrible. It's hard for me to imagine a turnaround in any one of these three religions that we would say turns them from sort of majority destructive to majority constructive. I'm having a hard time seeing how that's possible. And I don't know what to do about that except to name reality and say these religions and the faith leaders associated with them, by and large, not entirely, right? But by and large, have failed us.
Yeah.
Dramatically. Like in a way that's almost unthinkable.
Yeah.
I think naming that is like step one. Challenging that in some way, step two, or stepping away from those institutions, if that's more comfortable to you, confronting them, if you feel like that's something you can do, it's certainly helpful and necessary. But yeah, it's just hard for me to imagine thinking that we're going to get a better world if we have more Judaism, more Christianity, more Islam, going to India, more Hinduism. These things are proving destructive.
Maybe it's because, I'll segue, and then we're gonna open it up. I'll segue to my last question for now, and that is, these religions, right, have been taken over by an ethno-nationalism.
Yeah.
And so, here's one of my pet peeves. There's all kinds of groups now arising in progressive. I mean, it's kind of fun to take on, taking on the religious right is easy pickings. And it's like low-hanging fruit.
I mean, at least
I've
intellectually.
I've been spending my time on taking on my fellow progressives, and so let me tell you what my pet peeve is. There's all kinds of groups now arising within progressive circles, religious and secular, bemoaning and taking on Christian nationalism and calling it for what it is: white, racist, white Christian nationalism. These same,
And patriarchy.
absolutely,
That's a big
no,
piece.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Sometimes I think maybe we want to just say, what's the main problem with the world? Men. I know, I think it's that simple.
You're playing
I mean, I'm sorry, but.
No, you're right. I mean, patriarchy fits right. Let me, what these same groups, though, are fearful of doing are saying that of the same fabric as racist, white, Christian nationalism, the same fabric is racist, white, European, Christian, and Jewish Zionism. Same fabric.
Definitely.
And so these progressive groups are all about Christian nationalism, as we should be.
Absolutely.
But they back off then, and you can't find them anywhere near the Palestine solidarity movements because they're fearful for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Say a word about, you already did, about including patriarchy, which is important.
Yeah.
Say a word, though, about Christian nationalism, Zionism, and this whole phenomenon that we're starting to identify in progressive circles.
I mean, I think what I realized at some point was that Israel was a kind of blueprint that other factions within countries decided they wanted. So Israel is a explicitly Jewish ethno-nationalist state, right? Unapologetically. What we have now is a desire in the conservative movement for essentially a white Christian nationalist state, controlling, being culturally superior to everyone else, controlling all the other groups, never giving them any sort of significant power. And Hungary is another place, right, where they've done the same thing. I mean, Hungary is like, as I understand it, there's a lot of anti-Semitism in a lot of these movements, and yes, you have Israelis cozying up to people in Hungary and other places where there is anti-Semitism because they support the same sort of ethno-religious state. And that is surprising, I guess, to a certain extent, or not surprising. I mean, maybe it all just goes back to European colonialism, and we've never just been able to beat that one entirely, right? Because that's what you have in Israel, and that's what you have in the United States. And what was it about progressives? How do we challenge progressive?
I mean, what's the deal with progressives shying away from taking on Zionism when they're really ready to take on Christian nationalism?
Yeah. I mean, the fear of being called an anti-Semite is real. That's used a lot. It's definitely playing a role, as we talked about earlier. Sometimes in certain communities, there's a close relationship, and this is especially true in progressive communities. There's a close relationship between the Jewish community and the Christian community, and it feels like, I don't know, a betrayal to the Christian leaders to speak out against Israel, a betrayal of their Jewish neighbors, right? And I think in the United States and in Israel, obviously, and really you kind of see it all over, Israel has a lot of effective spokespeople that they get on TV consistently to debate. They know how to talk to Western audiences, surprisingly, in ways that I'm shocked to see work. But it's combine that with really the failure of the mainstream media, which usually I'm defending the mainstream media from the right-wing movement, right? But in this case, I mean, the mainstream media has done a horrific job of covering the realities of what's happening there.
Right.
Somehow we've allowed Israel to allow no foreign journalists into Gaza the entire time. I mean, it's really unheard of. When we, the U.S. military is, I don't know about Vietnam, if they were embedded reporters. Were there? Okay.
Sure.
Because I was thinking about like how much harder it was to know what was happening in Vietnam than it is to know what's happening in Gaza, right? Like, you don't think so? Okay, good.
Love them, yeah, wow.
They were-
This is just
Yeah.
how many, I mean, democracies that are at least paying lip service to international law and human rights and liberal democracy, which includes freedom of the press. This has just been standard for reporters to be embedded. And somehow the entire Western media has allowed Israel to get away with not only not allowing any media, then killing almost every single Palestinian reporter in Gaza.
The press on their desks.
With press on their vest and with no outrage from the Western media at this. Nothing. Zero outrage, as far as I can tell. There was a time when there was I think it was Evan, somebody was being held in Russia. This was a journalist for, I can't remember, Wall Street Journal, maybe? Is that right? Can't remember his name entirely, but all the time you saw press people would have a pin on or would have on Twitter like free Evan, whatever. And great, they should. This is what they should be doing. They should be standing up for their fellow journalists around the world, especially those who are in these oppressive places. And in this case, I can't think of a mainstream journalist who's even said the names of any Palestinian journalists who've been killed. PBS, they are an exception. Agreed.
The ones that got their funding.
PBS is great. New York Times has been.
New York Times just today put the article about E1 settlement.
Good.
Well, I want to say thanks to you, and I want to open it up to the gang here for any questions you might have. And I don't know if we have a mic. Mike, there's Mike with the mic in the back, and so thank you, Michael, for bringing that around. Yeah, Victoria, please.
One of the individuals that you featured in your film, and Michael, he's probably knows everyone who's in that film. I had met just one of Michael's tours, 6 of the 8 that were in that film. One of them was Sam before. And just recently, he wrote an article that he posted online, it might have been on the blog,
Yeah, he's got a blog.
that now the Israeli government is strongly thinking about cutting off foreign outside visitors into the West Bank.
Mm.
And it's so important that groups that Michael takes in and that you and others have taken in make people see for themselves the facts on the ground and then take it back home to whatever country they live in and tell the story and let the world know. If Israel gets away with this, journalists won't get in, visitors won't get in. They're going to cut off the story from the rest of the world, and I'm really concerned about that. Have you two heard anything about this?
I've not heard about that.
Sam Lahore
I'm
just wrote
sure,
about it.
yeah, Sam's got his ear to the ground, so it doesn't surprise me. It would be sort of like taking lessons from Gaza, where it was like, it was better for us to not allow any foreign journalists in here, and sort of applying it. It sounds like, oh, we should do this in the West Bank as well, sort of. I mean, it's not exactly the same, I know you're saying not allowing foreign.
You know, Sam is saying that Palestinian families won't be allowed to have foreign visitors anymore.
I can tell you this much. I'll say 2 things to your question, Victoria. One, a direct answer, and then a tangent. We were there in May, and as of January 1st, now this is new since you've been there, as of January 1st, you have to apply now for an entry visa. And it's $18, so the money's not the problem. But you have to apply for an entry visa now, and it goes through, a government agency in Israel. And so, we were all approved, but there have been other groups
Into Israel or be able to go on the West Bank?
in Israel.
Okay.
You had to land at the airport or come across the bridge. And so, I have heard of other groups where, there have been people denied entry. So we were fortunate enough, to enter, all of us, but there have been other groups that hasn't happened. And speaking about Sam Bahor, just a connection with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates, when he made his trip to Palestine, spent at least a day, maybe more, with Sam Bahor in Ramallah. Remember, we met Sam in Ramallah. And after that meeting, I got a note from Sam. I'm on a regular Monday call with Sam and Jeff Alper every Monday for an hour. We're kind of a think tank thing. But Sam said, as soon as Ta-Nehisi Coates left, he said, Mike, he gets it. And he'll be writing about this. This is before he'll be writing about it, and so be on the lookout for his book. So this was a year or whatever it was ago, year and a half ago, but part of his conversion, Ta-Nehisi Coates, was his time with Sam Bahor. Sarah, please.
Yes, any plans for another film project in the future?
There are no concrete plans. I met with Eric, who was the one who made the film with the Eric's Broken War. And I said to him, I had texted him before we met, and I had said, you know, we should really think about following up with the same people now and interviewing them now and see what, basically interview them and see how their views have changed. What's their analysis of October 7th and everything that's followed. But that's just like an initial conversation that we started. So no concrete plans, no.
Okay,
Charlie, please.
a couple new things that are seeing happening, which one is very strange to me, but Marjorie Taylor Greene has been speaking out very loudly in support of Palestine. To me, I appreciate her truth telling, but I don't trust her because of her, you know,
Because of everything else she's ever said?
yeah, who's been in government.
Well, I may jump in here just quickly, Darlene, and I'll let Josh respond too. For those of us who are in, I've tried to be very careful. I've been doing this now for 25 years. And I've tried to be very, very careful. Now I get accused, you know, all the time, but careful to not let my advocacy for Palestinians devolve in any way into anti-Semitism. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an anti-Semite. She's a hater. And I want to stay as far away from her and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and that bunch. I want to stay as far away from them as possible because they hate Jews. They not only hate Israel, they really do hate Jews. They're anti-Semites. And we just, yeah, we might like something that she says, you know, offhanded, but she's not, first of all, she's not pro-Palestinian, she's anti-Israel, and she's anti-Semitic. And so I have just, you know, I'm a sinner like anybody else, you know, and so I'm sure I've crossed the line. But when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk, I want to just stay as far away as possible.
Yeah.
Josh, you want to?
No, agreed.
Okay, and the other thing, I just saw the other day, and this is sort of a positive for me. The Methodist Church has divested totally from Israel.
Yeah.
That's a positive, yeah.
That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, in our webinar yesterday, we had a guy named David Wildman, who was at the center of, he's a member of the executive committee of the Methodist Church. And he's been working with the Methodist Church for 10 years to get them to divest from weapons sales. And he told us yesterday at the webinar, David's a longtime friend, and we were just together at the Carter Center in Atlanta 3 weeks ago. And he said that if you read the resolution carefully, there's 60 countries that are either autocratic or fascist or have military occupations. So it's not, they didn't just single out Israel, they singled out all these 60 countries that have these certain criteria about this, that the Methodist Church has divested or is planning to divest from. And so there's a set of criteria that the Methodist Church was very, they spent a lot of time developing these criteria. So really, it is good news, and we should applaud the Methodists.
Absolutely.
But it was painstaking, and it took a lot of years of work, and to convince the various financial boards and all the rest, as well as the executive committee to do this, and then the lay people who voted for it.
I don't see any other hands at the moment, okay. But I have one from someone who's here, but saw the film and wondered why you didn't present a solution.
Yeah, come on.
I know.
What the heck?
We did wrestle with that. But we decided that we wanted to focus on the Israelis and Palestinians in the film and sort of lift them up and lift up sort of in some ways the mundane work that they do year after year after year and say like, these are really, I mean, they're exceptional people, but they're also regular people that you could emulate in many ways. And also, none of them in our interviews, and really if you speak with them, they rarely are like, this is the solution. The only person who does that is, because he wrote a book on it, is Helper.
Yeah.
Right? He's got the one state solution, which he wants to name, what's the name again? Zaza or something?
Yeah.
Yes, I said, when you guys went, when you and Mike went to Palestine, what these two guys, what they have done, why do you want to come up to them? They want you to come to them, they want you to come straight to them?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tony.
Thanks. They wanted to play. They're like the new ice agents. Okay? Yeah. The settlers are like the new ice agents. They want to play cop and be bullies. The settlers wanted to bully us. And just like I think people who are signing up for their $50,000 bonus for ICE, sure, they want the money, but they want to bully people.
Yeah.
They want to dominate people. That's what they wanted to do. That's what those settlers wanted to do. They wanted to make us afraid, humiliate us if they could. Just make us do things. Make us walk over here to them. You come over here to me. You're nobody. Screw you. You know what I mean? We are gonna have to stiffen our spines and tell people to go to hell to their faces. These people doing these things.
This is maybe neither here nor there, but I've heard some talk that there may or may not be some evidence, but I've heard it said that Netanyahu surreptitiously encouraged Hamas to attack on October 7th as a distraction against his political trouble. Do you think there's anything to that?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
I don't think there's anything to the fact that he knew this attack was coming and allowed it, or it is true that Netanyahu and his right-wing government thought that they could continue this arrangement with Hamas, which splits the Palestinians between Gaza, Hamas in Gaza, and Fatah in the West Bank. So in that sense, they were encouraging and supporting Hamas and Hamas's rule in Gaza. That's unquestionable. They paid They gave money to Qatar so that Qatar would give money to Hamas so that
Right.
Hamas would stay in power.
That's right.
Because this splits the Palestinians into two factions.
So that may be the basis for these assumptions.
I'm guessing that's also, there's pretty credible reporting that the Israeli military has funded like alternative clan groups, Hamas, to like cause problems, in Hamas, in the Gaza Strip as well. So there is a lot of surprising nefarious things that happen where Israel supports like militant groups and it doesn't make any sense. But I don't think in this case, they would know that's coming and allow it.
Any other questions?
One question here. My concern in regards to the Palestinian people is in reference to the hostages that are being held by Hamas. Whenever that gets settled, my concern is, one, from what I understand, maybe you can correct me, once those people are released, a lot of them are gonna be dead, correct?
Some of them we know are already dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And
how many?
now whether Hamas starts feeding them, before they're released,
Right.
again, that could fall back on the Palestinian people, because people are gonna look at the conditions and the dead bodies and say, you're getting what you deserve. And that's my biggest concern. This is gonna give Israel more momentum.
Yeah, I mean, it has worked for them to say, the line they like to say is like, release the hostages and this can all be over, right? I don't think there's any validity to that claim. I don't think Israel's actions do not show that their priority is to get the hostages home. Their priority is to destroy as much of Gaza as possible. And the only place that really has not been destroyed yet is Gaza City, which they are currently starting to destroy.
Right.
They want to make it uninhabitable.
Right, and that's my concern, is if
Yeah.
you're gonna release these dead bodies, which they're gonna let everybody in the world see, and they're gonna reflect the conditions of the hostages that are still living,
Mhm.
and again, that's basically going to give Israel the excuse to move back in.
I think what we've seen is that people's sympathies can be aroused for suffering Jewish people, and people's sympathies are not as easily as aroused for suffering Palestinian people.
Right.
I don't know how to possibly solve that problem. I mean, when the video was released of I think it was two different, Jewish Israeli hostages, they were very emaciated, right? It was like an outrage in Israel.
Yeah.
I mean, hundreds of Palestinians have already starved to death.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me, to feel a lot of sympathy, for a people that only has sympathy for their own people.
Right. Okay.
The other
I mean,
thing that gets lost,
it's a moral failing.
the other thing that gets lost in this conversation, and again,
I don't want those people to starve. I don't.
No.
But I mean, if I was Hamas, would I feed the hostages when they're starving my people? I probably wouldn't. I hope I would be better than that. I hope I would not be a person holding hostages. But like, you can understand why they're not feeding these hostages.
They should send them to one of those wonderful feeding stations that.
Yeah, let them go try and get some aid, right? See how that goes.
we're concerned about, it's really hard during these times, right, to keep a moral center
It is
as
very
a human being.
Yeah.
So every human life is sacred. And so we, of course, have concern about these people who Hamas is holding.
Absolutely.
No, full stop. It's interesting to me, the language that's used. So we talk about the hostages that Hamas is holding,
Yeah.
and we talk about the prisoners that are in Israel's military prisons. And I mean, just think about the contrast in that language. The contrast in that language. So what does that immediately tell you? That some of these prisoners are guilty of something because they're in jail, even though they might be under administrative, I mean,
Many of them are.
you see what I mean? So, I mean, so,
Criminal versus innocent.
and so, I guess I wanna just caution us to be aware of the language that the media continues to just force onto it, and it makes it different. I mean, it changes the way we frame things. And so we have to constantly reframe things according to what's real and not how it's being presented to us from the outside. And so, yes, but what about the hundreds and the thousands? Not only the ones who are starving to death now and are being forcibly starved. I mean, this isn't just, they're being starved, like in the passive voice, right? The media loves to use the passive voice. People are being killed. Well, no, Israel's killing them, right? Biden killed them. Trump killed them. These are criminals in our country and in Israel. So, I mean, we got to stop using the passive voice, and we have to equate prisoners and prisoners, hostages and hostages, however they want to frame them. We got to make sure that the language that we use is accurate to the situation.
And the abuses that have been chronicled, that Palestinians have suffered in Israeli custody since October 7th are horrific.
Well, yeah.
They set up a camp called Sede Teiman, and you can't, I mean, people were forced to be strapped to the bed, wear diapers, weren't allowed out of their beds. These are Palestinian prisoners. We have no idea what they did. Often they were just, we didn't even know their identities, right? This stuff is reported. You kind of have to look for it. It's not on the cover of the New York Times, whereas, just about anything Hamas does, is reported out widely. So there's a real difference there, yeah.
I wanna let you, yes, ma'am.
I'm just thinking if Hamas gives up those, hostages, then Israel's just gonna get rid of all Palestinians. Right now, they're holding back because they might get in trouble for killing their own hostages. But as soon as those hostages are gone, it's gonna be all out, let's just get rid of all Palestinians.
Yeah, I don't think giving back the hostages is a way to end this. I think it is in Hamas and Palestinians' interest for them to get back those hostages. I don't think it's actually helping them at all. It has not stopped any of these offenses. The bombs keep dropping, even though they've killed some of their own hostages. They don't care.
In fact, the demonstrations that you see, well, we met with Israeli Jewish journalist Gideon Levy back in May this year. He was saying, beware in the West. You see all these demonstrations, the tens of thousands and tens and tens and tens of thousands demonstrations within Israel against the government. He said these aren't demonstrations about Palestinian justice or Palestinian freedom. These are about the hostages. They don't give a rip. They give a rip about Palestinian justice for Palestinians or justice for people in Gaza. So I want to give you the final word, but before that, you're involved in an exciting project in Western Michigan called still processing.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that, and then encourage us to look you up, and then also give us whatever closing words you might have for us.
Okay. So we started, my dad and I started this organization in fall of 2022, I believe, right? And to put it simply, we were tired of trying to change the church, but we still wanted to have meaningful conversations about purpose, meaning, human thriving, how to respond and be healthy after trauma, all kinds of subjects that interest everyone, essentially. So we said, let's create our own space where we can talk about whatever we want in whatever way that we want, without any of the constrictions that a faith community puts on you. So that's what we've done, and we've had monthly gatherings. Yeah, typically, I interview someone with expertise in something. We've had a lot of therapists. We've had numerous authors, people like Brian McLaren, who some of you may know. So we still had some Christian adjacent.
You had the author of Jesus and John Wayne.
Kristen Dumais, author of Jesus and John Wayne, that's right. It's just been a way for us to create a space where we can have the type of conversations that we think are necessary, without them needing to fall into a certain paradigm.
What's the name
A
of
belief.
the church and where is it?
Okay, not a church, but
Oh.
just anything.
Still processing.
Still Processing.
Name.
That's the name. It's called Still Processing. You can find it at stillprocessing.org. And next year, we're gonna do more than a gathering a month, about 2 a month.
And where is it?
We're just trying to be creative and fun.
Western Michigan, Holland.
Is that Holland or Sheba?
Oh.
Yeah. And we're gonna be, a lot of them they're all taped. Some of them are just audio, some are video and audio. And we're gonna start live streaming them, hopefully in October. We'll have that ready to go.
Closing words for us in terms of our Palestinian activism here. And our human rights activism in this community.
Yeah. I think human rights and international law are two of the best things we've done as human beings. I mean, we've done a lot of good things, but it's really amazing that after World War II, we wrote, and most countries signed on for things like the Geneva Convention and the, what's the human rights one? The International Declaration of Human Rights. Universal, thank you. We should be proud of these things and we should defend them, is what I would say. And this is something I don't think I appreciated before I started doing this work. Another thing I'll just add in conclusion is I've adopted, recently I came across this author, her last name is Vanderloo, and she wrote a book about hopeful pessimism. And I've not been able to get myself to hope, but I can get myself to hopeful pessimism, which means the future is legitimately open. We can make a different future. The pessimistic part is it's going to be really freaking hard, and it might take longer than our lives to see these changes. So hopeful pessimism is one word, and then the other word is commitment. So instead of saying I have hope, I say I'm committed to these causes. I'm committed. And I'm going to keep myself committed to these causes, even when I don't have hope. I'm going to keep my commitment. Thank you.
Let's say thank you.